to Meadowsweet Farm Fiber Arts Design Studio. This is a podcast about knitting, spinning, weaving, and just about anything that relates to the making of cloth. My name's Bonnie, and I live in a small farm in southwestern Pennsylvania. I have dedicated my life over the years to preserving the rich textile history and traditions that have been passed on through the generations. So I invite you to join me as I explore these timeless heritage fiber crafts. Hi. Okay. This is Scarlet Kitty, and Scarlet found me. And this is kind of a little interesting story. And I'll share this with you if you don't mind first. When she comes around, you have to grab her. She's so sweet. Okay, you gotta let her go. Scarlet Kitty, when I was down in West Virginia, I was sitting on a big old front porch in a big old early 20th century house. And all of a sudden, there's this little kitten that came up on the porch, and she was just starving. And I remember now it was in probably the late spring, right before summer. I remember seeing a little black kitten, and there's a woman that lives on the street, and she was feeding the kittens or any stray cats. She was feeding them, and they would always kind of hunker underneath her porch. And Angie moved, and so all of a sudden this little kitten is just roaming the streets, and I'd seen her every once in a while, and it was late in August, and I was sitting on the porch, and there she was. And so we were eating pizza, and I gave her a piece of pizza, my pizza, and she just devoured it. So I went to the little grocery store, and I got her some kitten food, and I got her little cans of kitten food, and then I took her, and I just fell in love with her, and I took her and had her spayed, and then I brought her here back to my farm. So she's here with me all the time, and she was, I think, about 4 months old when I got her. So she had been on her own for all that time, and she's just not used to being handled, and so I have to be really careful with her. She's gotten much better. I read on the internet that cats that have kind of been in the wild for a while, they tend to get overstimulated if you pet them or hold them too much. And so she's very loving and she's very affectionate, but she is the typical definition of a cat where she wants you when she wants you. And if she has something else on her mind, then you have to just let her do her thing. But I chose her name. She's Scarlet Kitty, and I chose her name Scarlet because of the movie Gone with the Wind. There's that one line where Scarlet says, "As God is my witness, I will never go hungry again." And so that's why she became Scarlet. Kitty. Hi. Welcome to Meadowsweet Farm, Fiber Arts Design Studio. My name's Bonnie, and this is a podcast about knitting, spinning, weaving, textile history, quilting, just about anything that's related to the making of textiles or cloth. So today's March 7th, and it's an absolutely gorgeous day today. The sun is shining. It's still cold. It's in the 30s here, but it's spring is on the way. Tomorrow we're going to be springing ahead, so we'll be turning our clocks ahead so we get a little bit more daylight during the day, which is always good. So again, thank you all so much for coming. And you can find me on Instagram, you can find me on Ravelry. I do have a Facebook page. I have an Etsy shop, so you can find me at all those places, and I will put the links below to where you can find me if you want to follow me elsewhere outside of the podcast. So today what I want to do is I would like to first of all, thank everybody who subscribed to my podcast. Thank you for your beautiful comments. If you're new to the podcast, if you want to hit the subscribe button and give me a thumbs up, that would be great. I would really appreciate that. So I want to make sure that I thank everybody, and everybody is welcome here. I'm new at this, and I'm trying to sort out exactly how I'm going to organize things. I feel like I have a pretty good idea of how I'm going to organize the podcast. So I'll just run through basically the way I'm going to do this. And first of all, I'll give you a little bit of a farm update with my horses. Second of all, I'll share things I'm working on, the works in progress. I'll share some things that I finished, and we'll talk a little bit about spinning and weaving. And then I'm really interested in historical textiles, and I'm primarily interested in the makers of those textiles, and their process as well. So it's not only historical textiles, but textiles from other cultures, and I'll share, and modern makers too. So I want to share some things that I get access to as I travel around and meet different people. And I do want to talk about a project that I'm working on. So there's a couple things that I'm working on that I want to share with you. Then today I'm going to take you on 3 road trips. So we'll save those things towards the very end. And then the very last thing that I will always do is share with you a story from my blog. So it's just a little reading that I would like to do. And if you watched the last podcast, you might not have caught the very, very end. I'll try to put in some of the bloopers that, as I'm filming, some things that happen along the way that I edit out, but I'll share some funny things with you. So again, thanks everybody for being here. So the very first thing I want to do is I want to take a moment and thank everybody for subscribing. But I also want to thank the Canadian crocheter, Deb. You mentioned me in your podcast, not the one you just did a couple days ago, but the one before that. So thank you so much. That was really nice. And I really do enjoy your podcast. It's great. So thank you. So I do want to start off. Last podcast, I am giving this yarn away, and I ask everyone to please put in the comments below if they could please tell me what their favorite fiber arts project is. So this is a yarn that I purchased from the Bluefield Yarn Company in Bluefield, West Virginia, and I'm going to take you to her shop in this podcast today. So I'll share some things with you related to that. But I do want to announce the winner. It's hand painted, and it's merino, bamboo, and nylon. And what I do with this, and what I've done in the past, is I make a scarf called the hitchhiker scarf. And I have this one on my needles right now. And this is a lovely scarf. I've shown this a couple times, and I think I have it in some of my old podcasts, just the photographs of them. But you can purchase this on Ravelry, and it just takes one skein of this particular yarn. And this yarn, and if I say the word, I'll mess it up, but it's KHUSKU is the name of the color. And it's really pretty. It's showing up really nice and very true to color. And when I went to the Bluefield Yarn shop the other day, they actually don't, this is the last skein that they have in the shop. They don't have any more of this. So you're getting a really special giveaway prize. But this word, KHUSKU, it's a Quechuan name, and it's a word that means colorful. And I always have to, just give a little bit more detail. Quechuan is an indigenous language, and it is spoken by the Quechuan people who are primarily living in Peru. And this language is one of the world's primary languages. So the story with this yarn is that some of the proceeds, when you purchase this yarn, some of that purchase price actually goes to support schools in Peru. So this is a really, really nice yarn, and it does make beautiful beautiful scarves. I've made several, and they're really nice. And I actually have a few more skeins of this that I'm going to keep making the hitchhiker scarf. I really, really like that. I can't remember who the designer is, but if you go into Ravelry and you search hitchhiker scarf, you can find it. She's got some really, really nice patterns. Okay, so the winner is the winner is Marilyn Wiley. And so Marilyn, if you could please get in touch with me either through Instagram. I will also put a link to my email, my Meadowsweet Farm email address. So I'll put that link below. And if you please get in touch with me, I will send this out to you. So congratulations, Marilyn. So I hope when you get this and when you have time to make something with this, I hope you share some photographs with me. I'd love to see what you do. Okay, next up. Okay, let's start with the farm update. There really isn't much other than next weekend I have the farrier coming, and Sherry is going to trim all the horses' hooves, and that's always a treat. And Sherry and Jane, who was actually my PhD advisor when I was finishing my PhD, she comes out with Sherry, and we wrangle up the horses, which isn't hard at all. And she's wonderful. She does such a great job with the horses. The horses that I have, the one horse is a rescue horse. Her name is Beatrice. And whenever I got her, she was a pretty crazy wild horse, and she was very difficult to ride. I still to this day don't ride her, but she's very loving and she's very sweet. One of the problems that I had with her was that whenever the farrier would come to trim her hooves, she would just kick, and she would just go crazy. And so I found Sherry, and she came and she worked with her, and she started massaging her back and her hips. And the problem was that whoever had been trimming her feet in the past, they weren't doing it right. So she wasn't standing right, and it was causing a lot of pain. So Sherry worked with her, and it took a long time, but eventually she was able to work with her hooves and get them the way that they should be, so that she didn't have any pain whenever she was standing. And now whenever Sherry comes, she automatically picks up her feet, and she's just really sweet. And Sherry says that my farm is the Zen farm, because my horses are just all calm, and there's never any drama or anything like that happens. So she's coming on, they're coming next Saturday, and I'm going to have a little lunch for them. I think I'm going to start to do that. She usually comes about every 6 or 7 weeks to trim the horses, and it's always just fun to see Sherry and to see Janie. So whenever they come, I'm going to have lunch from now on, because I really appreciate them coming out and doing that for me. So works in progress. Okay. So I have a couple things here as far as works in progress goes. I am almost done with this hitchhiker scarf, and I don't know, 30 some points. That's how I usually keep track of when I'm getting close to being done outside of the skein. So I'm pretty close to being done. Over the next week, like I said, I have spring break, so I should be able to, in the evening, relax and get this done. So that's coming along. This is going to be a new work in progress as far as my quilting goes. My little star quilt that I shared the last podcast, I have not had any time to work on that. So hopefully over the next week, I want to get the hitchhiker done, and then I'll focus on that. But I am going to start. In the last podcast, I mentioned a scarf that my daughter bought me several years ago, and it was a cotton fabric that was hand woven and hand spun, and it was mud painted. So what I did is I found some mud painted cloth on the internet, and here's a couple pieces. And I'm gonna, hopefully in the next podcast, I will be able to show you how you can do mud painting. So I purchased, this is called earth pigment, and it's mud. So I'm going to show you how to do some mud painting, and I think that'll be fun. So, and I'm also going to make something with these that I'll be able to share with you next week as well, or next podcast. Okay, I want to share this quilt with you. This is a quilt that I put together a few years ago, and I'll put photographs up. But this is 4 seasons, and each one of these squares was embroidered by my grandmother. And when I was a little girl growing up, my grandmother taught me how to embroider. And she used to embroider handkerchiefs, and she would embroider pillowcases. And she had this wicker basket. It was a sewing basket, and it had a round lid. I don't think I have hers, but I found one very close to hers at an antique shop. And she just had, I would just play in that while she was embroidering. So she did show me how to make the stitches, and I just loved sitting with her. So my mom gave me these a long time ago, and I put the quilt together. But my problem is, and again, I have issues. I can piece everything together. I don't have any problem with that. I can pick out the colors. The back on this is polka dot, and it's fun. I like it. And I know in this, it's got the squares. I'm being crazy with this. It's got the squares of plain that I've put some designs in, and I can do some fun things here with the quilting. But when it comes to the embroidery, for you folks out there that quilt, can you give me in the comments below any suggestions on how am I supposed to quilt these squares, the ones that have the embroidery? I'm so afraid I'm gonna mess it up, and I'm really afraid I'm gonna damage this, and I don't want to do anything to hurt my grandmother's embroidery work. So if anybody has any suggestions on what to do with this, please let me know. So just put your comments in the comments below. And before I forget, I would like to say that when I hit 1,000 subscribers, I am going to put together a giveaway package, and I'd like to do 2 or 3 giveaways with that, and they'll all be the same, but I'll choose 3 folks, and I'll have a question and all that kind of stuff. But when I hit 1,000, I would like to do that, and the gifts will be things that I've made here. So I'm just really so grateful for everybody subscribing and their lovely comments. So as far as finished objects go, it's just been one of those times whenever I get a little bit of time, I just need to think and just relax my mind a little bit. So what I've been doing is I've been spinning. So I finished spinning the roving for this yarn, and this is it comes from the Gotland Wool Company, and Gotland sheep, or the curly sheep from Sweden. And this is a farm in Vermont that's called the Grandview Farm, and they offer farm stays and also fiber classes. So this is really, really nice yarn, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. I really do love the color. It's gray, and it's got some flecks of black fiber in there. It's really pretty. So I believe that what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the energy out of this fiber. I'm going to block it, and I'll wet it and block it, and I'm not sure what I'm going to make with this just yet. I might make a pair of mittens. I don't know. So, okay. Let's see. This is the next thing I want to, doesn't this look crazy? I went to an alpaca farm a few weeks ago, and I am going to go back and do an interview with the owner. It's a really beautiful shop. It's not very far from my house. So, but I found this. This is alpaca, and this is alpaca fiber. And I love all the different colors. I'm going to make a rug with this, and I found this on a Facebook page for, I think it was for selling weaving and spinning and knitting things. So I belong to a whole bunch of fiber related Facebook groups. So I'm going to make, one of these makes a rug, and I'll probably make, you know, small rugs with this, just little throws, and I will share that with you when I get that done. One other thing that I'd like to talk to you about is I was watching the Fruity Knitter podcast and a Fruity Knitting podcast, and they did an interview with Deborah Newton. And I've been following her for a really, really long time. I have one of her books that she put out, I think it was in the early 90s maybe, and it talks about her design process and how you put together sweaters. And I've really used that book a lot. So they mentioned as they did the interview, they mentioned this finishing school. And Deborah was showing some of her work. And one of the things that I was really fascinated with, and I'm definitely going to try this, is, I have to find a good picture. I think it's in the back. Here it is. Okay, one of the things that she does is she combines fabric with knitted garments. And I am really, really interested in trying that. So I'll do a close-up picture of this, so I'll insert that so you can take a look at what she's doing. But I'm going to give that a go. I'm not afraid to cut up my knitting and my weaving. In fact, I have made a cardigan sweater with a zipper in it that what I do is I do hand knitting, but I also have knitting machines. And I'll tell you the story someday about my knitting machine experience. And I actually was doing production knitting for several years for designers. And what I did with the cardigan that I designed is I made the cardigan, I actually made the fabric on the knitting machine, and I made it as wide as the knitting machine bed would allow me. So I used every single needle on the bed, and I used a very, very generous tension on the machine, so it had a lot of stretch and give. And then when I was finished, I threw it in the washer and felted it, and then it became a little heavier and a little sturdier fabric. And then I was able to cut it up and do whatever I wanted to do with the fabric and not worry that it was going to unravel or anything like that. So I have 2 sweaters I'm working on a commission right now, and I have 2 sweaters that I'm working on, and when I finish those or start piecing those together, I will share that process with you. Okay. This is something that, it's going to look crazy. This is something that I make, and I have these on my Etsy shop, and these are just kind of fun. I had this on my kitchen door for Valentine's Day and just to kind of brighten up the entryway there. But this is made with a coat hanger, and you just open up the coat hanger and make it into a circle, and you can actually, there's a little hook that I still have to wrap some fiber around. So what I did is, I hate to throw away anything, and especially when it's textiles. So this was an old drop cloth, canvas drop cloth, and I just started cutting it up in long strips, just randomly long strips, and I just started tying these onto the coat hanger. And then this is Gabe's, his little handkerchief. It's like a bandana, and Gabe has a really bad habit of chewing everything up, including his bandanas. So this was one that he chewed up, and so I just took it and cut that into strips, and I made this wreath. So it's really simple, and you can make the strips as short or as long or random, whatever you want to do. So so this is a finished product, or a finished project. The other thing I wanted to share with you, there's just a couple things here. In my stash of many looms, I have a triangle loom, and this is a shawl that I made out of some yarn that I had purchased. The company is no longer in business. She used to go to the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival. It was called Marhaven. And what this is it's merino fiber that they mule spun. And what mule spinning is mule spinning is when they take the shorter stapled fibers from cotton and they spin it into yarn. So mule spinning has traditionally been used for cotton fibers, but what Marhaven did, and I think there are other companies out there that will do this with wool, is they took their merino fiber, which is very short stapled fiber, and they mule spin this. So I made this shawl on a triangle loom, and what is really unique about this shawl is the, I'd say I did 1, 2, 3, 4 colorways. I think I have every color in here that she sold in this yarn. So it's got cream and green and purple and blue and like a brown color. And there might be a dark gray that I don't have in here. When she was closing up her shop, I did contact her, and I have a few more skeins in the basement of a variety of different weights. This is a kind of a bulky weight yarn. And it's felted a little bit, and it's really easy to work with. As you can see, it has a really nice drape to it, and I just really enjoy wearing this. So, and it's really special to me because it does have all the colors that she was selling in her shop. And so, like I said, I think there are some companies that are still doing this, but I'm not sure. I could look it up if anybody's interested. The next thing that I want to share with you is this is a sweater that I made This is also a couple years ago I made this. This is all hand spun, and I made this on my knitting machine. And let me just tell you a little bit about this sweater. I was at my machine one day, and I had everything set up, and I didn't know what I was going to make. So as you can see, this with the knitting machine, you have to make things in pieces. So I wanted to experiment a little bit with different hand techniques on the knitting machine. So I was practicing here, first of all, doing the seed stitch, and then I decided I wanted to try a little bit of cabling here, and this is just a one direction cable. And then I wanted to do like a two-directional cable and some ribbing in the center, some more single direction. So I was just playing. And so when I got done with the panel, I thought, oh, I think I can make a sweater from this. So I did exactly the same with the next panel, and then I did the sleeves like this. So this is really, I don't have a pattern. I'd have to sit down and think about this again and try to copy this, but this is just me having fun one day at the knitting machine and just playing. So so there's lots of things that you can do, and I was glad to hear that a lot of folks say that they find, even though that knitting in the round is great for sweaters, that when you seam sweaters, it seems to give you a better drape, a better fit, and I have found that to be true. Hi. Change of scene. I'm here in my in my sewing room upstairs, and this is my friend. Her name's Phoebe, and her name's Phoebe Manchester, after a collection that I worked on. And this is an antique dress form. I think it's probably, I'm gonna say this dress form's probably 1890s, early 20th century. And I want to show you this sweater. This sweater is a cashmere sweater, and I purchased this at an antique shop several years ago. And what's really fascinating about this sweater is not only the history of the sweater, but just the construction of the sweater. So I'm going to start first of all and tell you a little bit about the history of these kinds of sweaters. These sweaters, these cashmere cardigan sweaters, they became very, very popular in the 40s and in the 50s. And I believe in the 1940s, Lana Turner was in a movie where she wore a really tight cardigan sweater, and she became known as one of the sweater girls, and they just became extremely popular. In the 1950s, what they did to add a little bit of twist to the cardigan is the girls would wear them backwards, so they would the buttons would all be on the back rather than the front. But when the cashmere cardigan sweater first came into vogue, what they were doing was they were embroidering all over the sweater. So it had very delicate flowers, or just a lot of embroidery stitches added to the cashmere fabric. Then they became so popular that they started to wear the cardigans for evening wear. So you would have this cardigan sweater, and then you might have another sweater a tunic on the inside, and then you would have a matching skirt that went along with the whole ensemble. And usually what they would do is the fabric that the skirt was made from, they would also line the inside of the cardigan sweater with that same fabric. So everything really, really matched. But they started wearing these sweaters for evening wear, and that's when they started to put fur on the sweaters. And I think, I could be wrong, I think this is beaver, and it's a beaver fur, but the buttons, and I'll show some close-ups, the buttons are like a satin fabric, which that would really be, you know, if you had a satin skirt or satin pair of pants, that would just be an absolutely fabulous, fabulous sweater and outfit, whole outfit. But it just, the whole details of this, they have a little button like this on the outside. It doesn't have a buttonhole, but it just has the hook and eye closure on the bottom. And then what's really interesting with this is you can see, and again I'll do some close-ups, but they would line a lot of these cashmere sweaters with either silk or just a really, really thin gauzy fabric. And this fabric has embroidery on the inside. I'm not sure if you can see it. Again, I'll put some close-up pictures in there, but you can see it's got embroidery. But what's really neat is the collar is put on the sweater completely by hand. Those are all hand stitches. And the lining is the same way. It's all done completely by hand. And I just think this is just a really, really cool, cool sweater. The other really unique thing is that the ribbing on the sweater is not joined. It forms like a little V at the bottom. I'm sure you can't see that very well, so I'll add some close-up pictures. So, and it's like that in the back as well, and it's just a really, really cool design. And let me see if I can pull this down here so you can take a look at. Even in the back, it's got the little V, and look at those satin buttons. They're gorgeous. And on the side as well, excuse me, Phoebe, I'll spin you around here. And you can see there, oops, sorry. It's got the satin buttons with the, you know, they just didn't join the ribbing on the sides and in the back. And I'll try to get a close-up of the, it's hard to spin her. And her dress doesn't fit quite that well. And there's the interior lining. It's just a really beautiful, beautiful garment. Oh, this is my sewing room, by the way, and this is the neat corner. If I turned the camera around and showed you the other mess that's in here, it's not too bad. I just have piles of things that I'm working on. But one thing I'll show you really quick is I love to go to antique shops, and I found these shoes. Let's see if I can, at an antique shop. They're actually my size, but I think I would kill myself wearing those. I just thought they were fun. And I love books, and some of these books that I have on the shelves here actually came from Stephen's mom's collection of books. But I try to put, there's my little teapot and just books and Just some fun things. I'll do a podcast and show you some of the things that I have. And here's a jar of all of my threads. And there's, let's see if you can see. So I don't want to wiggle the camera and make anybody sick, but yep, those are my crazy shoes. So I thought you guys might appreciate those. They have little buckles on the side. And look at that heel. Look at that heel, would ya? Do you believe that? They do fit. They actually fit. But I guess I would have to be in some kind of swinging outfit to wear those shoes. For sure. I took a brioche class this past Wednesday at the Bluefield Yarn Company, and this is a fabulous shop. This is in Bluefield, West Virginia, and Karen Rideout she's the owner of the shop, and she also did the brioche class. She is an excellent teacher. Brioche is pretty difficult to kind of wrap, at least for me, to wrap my head around it. But with Karen's patience and her instruction, it was great. I'm ready. So here we are at the Bluefield Yarn Company, the famous Bluefield Yarn Company, with Karen Rideout. And Karen, I'm taking a brioche class with her today. And if you just want to start over in the corner and just tell us what kind of yarns you have in this shop and how you kind of organize. So coming in here, what do you see?
The shop is pretty much organized by yarn weight, with a few exceptions. So it starts over in the corner with lace weight yarns, and then I have a wall and table and a few cubbies of sock and fingering weight yarns. And then over to the middle of the shop, I've got sport weight yarns in a cubby, and some table displays with just various types, different kinds of yarn. And but then I have a wall of Barocco brand yarns. So those aren't by weight, it's just by the brand. It's my Barocco wall.
And this is way in the back? Or?
It's right here in the center.
Okay.
And then it pans over. I've got some cubbies with DK weight yarns in them. And then towards the back of the shop, against the wall, are some bulky weight yarns and worsted weight yarns. And the same on the back wall is worsted and bulky weights. And then the wall behind you is my Plymouth wall. So it has a lot of Plymouth yarns, Plymouth Encore, baby alpaca grunt. And that's basically how I organize my yarns.
Okay. And then you've got a nice collection of all the needles.
A wall of needles, yeah.
And you have beautiful buttons. I've slowed this video down quite a bit so you could see how I join my fiber onto an existing strand of yarn on the spinning wheel. And it's pretty easy because what I do is I get the wheel turning, and I get the strand of yarn that's in my hand spinning, and as that's spinning, you'll see that I take a kind of a fluffed out piece of fiber, and I just let the yarn, as it's twisting, grab onto that fiber. And you'll see as the yarn is twisting behind my hand, when I add the little tuft of fiber onto that strand, I just basically just lay it on top of it. It joins on. It's almost like magic to me whenever I do this. So you'll see my hand is taking that fiber and just laying it almost on top as the yarn is twisting. And you don't have to fuss with trying to take a clump of fiber and making a join that is going to break or looks like a lump or a knot on your yarn. So it's pretty easy. Like I said, to me it's always magic when I make that join. I thought it might be kind of fun to take you on a little road trip through some of the back country roads in southwestern Pennsylvania. It was a really beautiful day when I filmed this, and it was fairly cold but sunny, and you can see there just wasn't a cloud in the sky. Off to my right, as we're driving down the road, you're going to see a cluster of beautiful blue spruce pine trees. And my neighbor planted these many years ago, probably before we planted our trees. And I remember when they were just tiny, and now they're huge. Off in the distance, you're going to see, we'll get closer to this building. This is a beautiful example of late 19th century Victorian architecture. And as we get closer to this building, you're going to see a small brick building that sits beside this building. And this is called a spring house. And these were outbuildings that were situated over or near a spring of water. And these were used for the family's water supply and for preserving and cooling perishable foods. And the one beautiful thing about Victorian architecture is the romantic taste and the 19th century technology that they used. They borrowed and adapted Gothic, Italian, Roman, and French Renaissance styles. And what's really, really beautiful about Victorian architecture is the extravagant use of architectural ornaments in wood, iron, and stone. And this is a beautiful, beautiful home. I can just imagine a late 1890s family sitting on this beautiful porch on a hot summer day, enjoying a glass of lemonade. Next on our road trip is a covered bridge. And this bridge is probably not any more than 5 miles from my home. And This bridge is called the Krebs Bridge. It's located in Washington County in Mount Pleasant Township. And according to a website, a Pennsylvania website, at one time there were over 1,500 covered bridges in Pennsylvania. And today there are about 209 that still remain. The very first covered bridge was built in 1804. It was built in Philadelphia, and sadly enough, it was destroyed by a fire in 1875, which seems to be the way most of these covered bridges ended up. They caught on fire. The longest bridge was built between Lancaster and York County in Pennsylvania, and this bridge was over a mile long, and it was completed in 1814, and sadly enough we lost this bridge to a flood. And I bet what you're asking or what you're thinking is why did they cover the bridges in the first place? And there are many, many theories. Some people actually have called these bridges the kissing bridges, because the folklore is that people would ride their buggies in the bridge, and if you were off on a date, and this would be a great opportunity to have a little bit of privacy. So the theories are, the primary reason is that that they were trying to cover the wooden trusses that extended the life of the bridge, and it extended it roughly from 20 years to about 100 years. This bridge has been beautifully preserved, but unfortunately there isn't much information about it. But you can see we can still use it. This is my partner in crime. This is Gabe, and he's calmed down a little bit. He was outside for just a little while. Sun shining, little sunbeams on him, and he's going to have a bath very shortly. And he's being so sweet. You good boy? Yes, he's a good boy. He's a good boy. We love you. Sit down. Sit. 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 He listens really well. He's very obedient. Sit.